their career in private markets and and around technology and across different continents. I had the chance and to be fortunate to have worked in North America, in China, in Singapore, and now in Switzerland, having this global aperture. So it'd be great to sort of share notes with some of you. Just fundamentally reshaped the economy, global economy. So first you have the internet, and then you have mobile, and then cloud. And each of these waves have been able to create entirely new behaviors, new business models, and ultimately hundreds of billions of dollars, or sometimes even trillions of dollars in enterprise value on top of every previous technology wave simultaneously. And it has the potential to redefine how work gets done, how services are rendered, and how value is really created across nearly every sector of the economy, and not just the technology landscape, right? Today, different is that we finally crossed a capability threshold. Models are finally good enough to be used in real enterprise settings, across multiple modalities like text, video, audio, image, etc. And this AI can today reason, write code, take actions autonomously, and improve through real-world usage, including recursive development. For example, the latest Claude 4.7 model was actually entirely built using the predecessor, the Claude 4.6 model. So performance has crossed and the cost has dropped. The usage does not plateau. This is an illustration of the Jevons paradox in real life. So companies are moving from sampling data within the organization because of human constraint to be able to analyze everything with the help of AI. What do I mean by this is that historically, company would just use human to, human analysis capacity was limited and expensive and not scalable, right? With AI, the marginal cost of analysis collapses. So instead of reviewing 5% of your financial transactions, or cybersecurity threats, or customer calls, or legal contracts, or medical records, now firms can analyze up to 100% of their data that they have stored, and God knows how much data those enterprises have from their history. A product reaching this level of scale this quickly across both consumer but also enterprises. So ChatGPT, for example, as a poster child of AI, has reached about 100 million of users in about less than half a year, which is something that took generational companies like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter several years or even up to a decade to accomplish in the past. And this is not stopped, right? Because ChatGPT, these charts, if I had to update them, I would be updating them every week. But today it's shy to a billion number of active users. And if you take the world population that have access to mobile internet, and excluding China where it's banned, that means that there's roughly a quarter of people with internet that use ChatGPT on an everyday basis across. We're really at the beginning of this journey, and we're not even talking about monetization yet. And similarly for enterprise, this is where it gets really interesting, and that's where the size of the price resides. Because today, surveys show that about 80% of US enterprises are now adopting AI in at least one of the functions. This type of breakneck adoption is something that we've never seen in enterprise before, to move a technology from experimentation to production in under 3 years. And if you think about cloud adoption as a comparison, it's been going on for 20 years, and we haven't even reached a 50% level. If you think about other companies who still move everything on, use everything on premise. Earnings release have announced that they have been able to find quantifiable ROI from the usage of AI. Whether we're talking about sort of a productivity gain or cost reduction or revenue uplift. So we're already in the span of 3 years past the innovation theater, and then moving into line level impact from that CFOs are able to see. Software market, this is roughly 1% of global GDP, which is already a quite large sector in its own, very attractive, growing about 12 to 15% per annum pre-AI era. So a lot of opportunity to be tapped into. But now, and already also give rise to a lot of generational companies that we have back. But the way AI is expanding this goes into two directions. First of all, instead of being software as a service, we're now going to a new paradigm of service as software. So the other way around. So because AI doesn't just support the workflows that you do, but it's able to create this new virtual workforce of infinitely scalable AI agents to complete tasks that were previously done by humans, but now they can do it 24/7 without sleeping, without having to take medical or sick leave or vacations or whatsoever. And this is able to allow software to capture a spend that historically sat, let's say, the 3.6 trillion of IT services, for example, but it'll eat into a larger portion of the value chain as it just changes the way people and machine interact. The coverage of these jobs, even if we're able to capture maybe 5% or 10% of the market by augmenting them, it already represents another trillion or another $2 trillion of TAM that it generates. And those are, by the way, all logos of companies that are within our Peak Technology Fund portfolio, so we love talking about them because of the success they've known so far. So on the code assistance side, this is one of the prime use cases right out of college, and it would take them sort of a month to develop any sort of product roadmap. And today, if the same product can be developed within the span of a few hours, the ROI becomes so attractive in any profession that we can think of than legal. And similar math, right? Law firms, if you think about the Norton Rose or the Kirkland Ellis or Paul Wharton, Garrison, whatever, their business model is really attractive but not scalable. You hire a law grad from Harvard or whatever, Columbia, out of university, still have to pay them $250,000 a year, but they're constrained by the number of hours that they work. They're young, they don't necessarily have all the knowledge in terms of what they do, like drafting contracts or doing the right jurisprudence research. And it might take them a week to come up with a draft of a shareholder agreement or share purchase agreement. Now imagine you have an AI tool like Harvey or Legora, who, by the way, Harvey or Legora, and you can prompt it in natural language. And because it has been trained on just millions of past contracts from the public domain, but also from your own firm that you've been operating for maybe 30, 40 years. And then it's able to draft whatever shareholder agreement that you're thinking of in maybe like half an hour, trading before even you started the call. And there's a lot of errors, mistakes, inconsistency, and then for companies, managing customer service is extremely slow and costly, hard to scale, seasonality spikes are just a nightmare. But now imagine a different reality. Word, maybe 18 months ago. This wasn't a part of anybody's vocabulary. But now, today is able to autonomously execute workflow complex work end-to-end. But then, with progress comes the potential threats, right? This rapid leap in capability has already outpaced traditional cybersecurity framework and introducing a new class of risk. What happens when a company that I'm going to use an illustration, Pocket OS, a company in the US, which is a platform that provides software infrastructure for automobile systems. So think about your dealerships, where a Claude, so Anthropic Claude-powered agent, wiped out their entire production database in 9 seconds for all the agents that are in production, right? So this is just a fundamental shift in security landscape. Anything around like guardrails or monitoring or evaluation or autonomous response, and this created a significant opportunity. And one CIO survey from Jefferies that was done like a month ago asked, in order to fund your AI budget, is the CIO budget going to cut that? And there's a lot of things they're cutting, but one area that nobody is willing to cut is around cybersecurity. Represent the tip of the iceberg, because the majority of the explosive growth, the innovative companies, the innovation that's happening in the market is, and category-defining companies of tomorrow are private companies. And for portfolio diversification, we're talking about accessing, thousands of companies, thousands of companies as opposed to maybe a dozen. And to think that when Microsoft or Amazon went public, they were at less than $1 billion valuation. Amazon went public in '97 at $400 million valuation, and today they're like $4 trillion valuation. So which means that, if you had bought these stocks 30 years, you would have made, thousands of X. So today, well, actually, it's a million X. Well, yeah. So basically, these type of scenario or outcomes today is actually a lot harder to happen, because companies, today's AI leaders, like OpenAI or SpaceX or ByteDance or Anthropic, They're inching in this $1 trillion value before going publicly by just staying private. Of most of them, all of them together, as of the end of 25. So this data is actually almost considered obsolete because 5 months makes a world of difference, but this is the most comprehensive or the easiest to compare. As of December, 5 months ago, these 10 companies together were valued at 1.3 trillion of valuation. But as of December 25, generated about $52 billion of run rate revenue, a number that has tripled year over year. So private companies are not lagging from the SaaS apocalypse, nor are they sort of, valued on a value like the SaaS apocalypse companies. Really, they're on their whole level. And $1 billion of revenue. That's 17 months ago. 17 months ago, the company was at $1 billion valuation. They reached $9 billion by the end of 2025. And this is a 9x, which already surpassed their own budget that was around $6-7 billion. But since then, this pace has not slowed down. This has actually accelerated, added about 10 billion of AR in the span of 9 weeks to go to 19 billion as of March. And then I had to create this manually on my chart because it was just impossible to fit everything in. 30 billion in around April, and the latest number as of May, $44 billion. It's been around for 27 years, has been surpassed, and which is the largest, the king of the software companies, led by an extremely reputable entrepreneur like Mark Benioff, has now been surpassed by a company that was born after COVID. About 200 billion, and this number has already been surpassed in 2026, just year to date, with a couple of large rounds coming from both Anthropic, OpenAI, and Databricks as well. Models like Anthropic and OpenAI. But this really dramatically understates how the ecosystem is actually developing. AI is really far from being a single product or a single company. It's a full and complete technology stack with multiple layers and numerous players that each are just capturing value in different ways, but also working with each other in a very complex spider web. So I think a useful way to think about this is the analogy of building a house. At the bottom of the house, you have the foundation of the house, the compute and the infrastructure layers. Those are companies that are mostly on the public equities. They're very hardware focused, and they're capital intensive and scale driven, and they have captured a lot of value early because these guys are required before anything else can be built in the house because they're foundation. But then as the house rises up, the profit pool tends to shift upward, and we have seen this with every past technology shift, and this every pattern. The next layer is the model layer. So these are basically the companies like OpenAI or Gemini, which form the neural network through which AI is built and delivered. So think of this like you're sort of the central control system of the house, and these are companies that are highly cash intensive and have a lot of ongoing training and inference costs, but have captured hundreds of billions of value so far. So we have a lot of exposure through our underlying funds and so on and so forth, and have really generated attractive returns for us. And then above it sits the platform layer. So this is functions like the house's internal framework. Think about your electrical, the plumbing system, the wiring panels. Just make everything that makes the house usable, but you don't see. Just working behind the scenes, in the walls, in the ceilings. So these are the picks and shovels of AI. So these are companies like data infrastructure, model tooling, observability, orchestration, so on, security, governance, compliance. These are mostly used by technical users that are under the CTO's office. And in practical terms, they are the software that are hidden behind the walls to make sure that the AI tools that are used by the business users are sort of usable, they are within a regulatory operational constraint and done in a reliable way at scale. And then finally, at the very top is the application layer. So that's the finished living space, the couches, the living room, or the kitchen, where AI becomes tangible, and that where end users and enterprises and business teams use on a daily basis, interact with the search, the workflow automation, customer support, the sort of software development, and many vertical specific use cases. And this is really sort of the everyday people or everyday worker in the companies. Software applications who capture the most value. And today, at the beginning, it's the other way around. Which was a similar case about 15, 20 years ago, but this is where we expect to see some flip as we go. And then I think just on a quick final slide before maybe just moving to questions with the panel, is another roadmap that we're seeing that is extremely interesting is the verticalization of everything. So AI has now enabled the development of software that are tailored to specific industry, lowering the cost and making industry-specific software that used to be less economical to build now something that can really be tapped into. Because if you think about softwares like SAP, Workday, for example, like these are softwares that are good for everyone, but great for no one. And the usage that comes from a pharmaceutical company or oil and gas company or insurance company will be vastly different in nature. And there's a limit to how much these large horizontal software companies can customize them. So as a result, we're spending a lot of time on the word different areas. This is just a short illustration around functions like finance, accounting, payments, human resource, where there's a number of examples of our portfolio of companies that are really focused on procurement platform for public sector, where finance and healthcare focused e-signature, or for example, restaurant focused payment system, etc. So this is another significant area that's been unlocked. So this is it. I'll stop here. I think maybe in the